Yesterday, an ACT Cargo 747 operating under a wet lease for Emirates air cargo operation went left off of the runway of 7 left in Hong Kong, ended up here in the water and killing two airport workers that were in a service truck on an access road. Here's what we know so far. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the BLANCOLIRIO channel, and this video is brought to you by the viewers that sponsor this channel here on Patreon. Starting first with the Aviation Safety Network, this accident happened on Monday, 20 October at nearly 4 in the morning local time, Hong Kong. A Boeing 747-481 ACT Airlines operating for Emirates Sky Cargo. So Emirates is short of cargo capacity due to the holdup of the Boeing 747 freighter line back there at Boeing, and so they grabbed at least two of these ACT Airlines 747 freighters from Turkey and pressed them into service there at Emirates Sky Cargo. And this is registration number Tango Charlie Alpha Charlie Foxtrot, one of the two aircraft that they have on this wet lease. So the Turkish Airlines provides the aircraft and the crews to operate these aircraft for Emirates. The 1993 model 747, there were two other fatalities, the two airport workers that were struck by the 747 after they went off the runway. The flight originated out of Dubai, and of course the destination was Hong Kong. Emirates flight, so they go with the Emirates call sign. Emirates flight 9788, the 747-481, operated by ACT Airlines, the Turkish airline, was destroyed when it veered off the left side of runway 07 left during landing at Hong Kong. The aircraft struck a ground service vehicle before coming to a rest in the sea, and the two persons in the vehicle were the two fatalities. The 4 crew members were rescued. The weather at the time of the accident was fine. The winds were out of the north at 15 to 18 knots. Here a little bit later in the day, 020 degrees at 4 gust 21. So only a slight crosswind of about 16 knots or less of crosswind from the left. And of course, the Boeing 747 can handle up to a 39-knot crosswind. So the winds were not a problem. The weather was fine and fair. The runway was dry, so the runway was not wet. So the weather does not appear to be a factor in this crash. Looking at the ADS-B exchange preliminary ADS-B data, it looks to me that this was a perfectly stabilized approach to runway 07 left, and it looks like the touchdown was on speed, right on the 1,000-foot markers. The only hint of a problem is that this data point to this data point, it appears that the aircraft was beginning to veer to the left and then did a sharp left off to the left side of the runway and into the ocean there at the new Hong Kong airport, or the bay. Or because of a lack of data points between these 2 points, the aircraft may have remained on center line and began veering off of the runway right about here at about 87 knots of ground speed. So obviously landing on runway 7 left, you normally take the high-speed taxiways off to the right. I don't think that it's possible that the crew could have been so tired that they got their left and rights confused and just decided to do a high-speed turnoff to the left. No, I think there was something wrong with the aircraft that investigators are going to have to try to figure out. Looking at the aerial view of the airport, here's the 1,000-foot markers, the touchdown zone, which apparently the aircraft touched down right on speed, right on target right there, and then veered off to the runway on the left. But it's this service road right here where the two fatalities presumably occurred. The car was not on the runway, as has been reported in some locations. The car was apparently here on the service road before being hit by the 747. Now let's take a wider look at this ADS-B data, and as usual, the aircraft does this typical kind of a hook sort of pattern to get down to the initial approach fix for the approach and then on into runway 7 left. And this is a pretty common pattern for getting into Hong Kong. Now let's take a look at an approach plate. I was unable to find the 7 left approach plate, but this is a similar pattern for 7 left, and it's this initial approach fix limes between 3,000 and 6,000 feet. The 747 was cleared direct limes for a high-speed approach to land on runway 7 left. High-speed approach. Let me clear up what that means. On these heavy aircraft, we often fly or request high speed below 10,000 feet because the speed limit is 250 knots below 10,000 feet. Often on departures, we'll need to go faster than 250 knots once we clean up the aircraft just to remain at a high enough speed above our stalling speed, so we'll request a high-speed departure. Sometimes these 747 freighters will request a high-speed departure because they want to exceed 250 knots below 10,000 feet on their arrival back into the airport. So this is common and not unusual to this case. So they were cleared high-speed approach direct to limes and on in for the approach. Now let's look at some of these other speeds down here. Cross Stella at 180 knots. So Stella at or above 2,000 feet and 180 knots. And cross 4 DME at between 150 and 160 knots. So right about in here, you're looking to be slowed down to 150 to 160 knots. And then on down to your approach speed, which in the 747 would be on the order of about 140 knots. So back here on the ADS-B data, we can see them here at 10,000 feet and 316 knots. So they're coming in a little hot for the high-speed approach between 10,000 feet and 5,000 feet. Here in the area of limes, they are slowing to 227 knots, and they're between the 3,000 and 6,000 foot restriction. So they're on speed for the approach. Next, they want to cross Stella, located right about here, at or above 2,000 feet and 180 knots. And it looks like the data did not quite come in for their ground speed at this point. But seeing how they were at 210 knots back here, it looks like they were pretty much on speed. Here's 168 knots up here. So it looks like they were on speed and on altitude here at Stella. Then finally at 4 DME, located right about here, they're to be between 150 and 160 knots and on glide slope. And here they are at 152 knots, looking good. The last data point brings them in at 100 feet right here at Charlie 3. Now let's go download the KML data and put it into Google Earth here, and it looks like this. And if we look down here, that 100 feet near Charlie 3 should put them right on target to hit the 1,000-foot markers, right on speed. So this looks to me to be a perfectly well stabilized approach. Normally when you see these runway sort of problems or runway excursions, it's usually preceded by an unstabilized approach. But that does not appear to be the case in this case. On glide slope 3 degrees right on in. So it doesn't appear to me that the weather was a factor, nor was the approach a factor. Investigators will be able to interview the crew. I presume it's a Turkish crew that's operating this aircraft. And from those interviews, perhaps get a good idea of what happened. Also be able to pull the cockpit voice recorders and get some inkling as to possibly what happened there. The aircraft data recorders may be able to tell a story. And they'll have to fish this aircraft out of the water and check the landing gear and braking system carefully and check for any anomalies with the nose wheel steering or with the braking of the aircraft. It's unlikely that thrust reversers would have caused such a drastic turn off of the runway such as this. So something else must have gone wrong with the aircraft to force it off the runway this drastically. Thank you so much for your support of this channel, especially the folks who are on Patreon that make this content possible. See you here.